Welcome to Poetry Northwest Summer Fall 2023 issue launch party. It's always exciting for me to have this happen like right on the cusp between the end of summer and the start of fall. It feels like, I've had the issue in my hands for a little while now, but it still has plenty of time to live its life out in the world. Being exciting and being an unexpected gift to the readers who open it. I am the editor of this thrillingly beautiful journal, and today it's my pleasure to be here with you and some of the outstanding poets from our most recent issue: Freeman, Mónica Gomery, Iver, as well as two of the finalists for this year's James Welch Prize for Indigenous Poets, our third year of offering this prize, Ibe Liebenberg and Nicole, Wallace. Super glad to have you all with us this evening. In the chat, you'll find a link to the current issue, which I encourage you to take a closer look at if you haven't already. In my introduction to the issue, I talk about what it means to take something for granted. And although producing this journal is, a tremendous labor undertaken by a group of literary citizens scattered far and wide across not only the United States, but also the world, I still somehow manage to expect and even to take for granted that each issue we produce will always be full of the best poems from the freshest voices. And somehow it is. It is truly the only expectation I have of the universe that it seems to want to consistently fulfill. And this issue is no exception. So I hope you get your hands on a copy if you don't have one already. A few quick notes before we get started. I'm joining you this evening from Missoula, Montana, the longtime home of the Salish and Kalispel peoples. I am so grateful every day for my life here as a guest in this river valley. It is a place and people I endeavor never to take for granted. You'll see in the chat a link to Native Land Digital, where you can find out whose land you're currently living on. I hope you'll actively participate in our acknowledgement tonight by sharing with us in the chat the native lands that you're joining us from. I'm delighted to have one of our senior editors here at Poetry Northwest, Malvika, co-hosting this event with me this evening. We are brought together in this gathering by Poetry Northwest events coordinator Brittany Paget, who has lovingly curated the list of guests you'll be hearing from tonight. We also want to extend our thanks to Mailyn Gotlund, who is once again joining us to provide ASL interpretation for our readers. Mailyn is an American Sign Language interpreter from Homer Glen, Illinois. She says she's had the ongoing pleasure, with much gratitude, of providing access for the ASL community through education and everyday appointments. It is a passion of hers to transform literary art into an artistic visual language, and we're so glad that she's a part of bringing these words to a fuller audience tonight. Thank you so much for being here, Mailyn, with us again. It's always a pleasure to have you back. Please also note that live captioning is available by pressing the live transcript button below. That is always an option as well. All right, Malvika, I will hand over the first introduction to you.
Hi. Thank you so much, Keetje. Our first reader tonight is an honor to introduce. Ibe Liebenberg was a finalist in our third annual James Welch Prize for Indigenous Poets, and we are so honored to have two poems from his entry, While We Were Quiet and Birds at Night, in our summer issue. In one, he writes, "My elders say it is a gift to translate unspeakable things, each piece lineated into these short, bite-sized, abbreviated lines that make me feel like I'm reading something unquestionably true and holy, that the thread between the gift of translation, the words of elders, and unspeakability can be stitched in each and every direction." In the other poem, he gives voice himself to unspeakable things through a litany of simple gestures: how to sedate a space, how to gentle the room, how to balance the flood. An enrolled citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, Ibe Liebenberg lives in Chico, California, and works dually as a firefighter for the state of California and a lecturer at Chico State University. He holds an MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Poetry and Fiction, and his work has appeared in Poetry, Threepenny Review, Ecotone, North American Review, and more. He's the 2023 winner for the College Tribal Journal's Creative Writing Contest and a finalist in the 2023 James Welch Prize at our publication. Please give a warm welcome to our first reader for the evening, Ibe Liebenberg. Ibe, take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll read the two that appeared in the issue first, and then I have two other poems. While we were quiet, I wanted those hips that rose heavy and waist skinny to bloom. She only swole to a curse, called my body sterile. Doctors promised she was barren. Teach me how to say it, words that numb, how to sedate a space when a mother or child provoke and harass her. Help me gentle the room so I can soften and balance a flood to a silly commotion. Then pretend her back home, messy in our bed like the labor she wished for. Birds at night. The harass of quiet, wings gathering over the hush of their dark magnified, is midnight, full of loud bodies. The geese lost now, circling 1 a.m. above the trees. My elders say it is a gift to translate these unspeakable things. All I hear is real labor, real pain in whatever tongue they sing. This one's called Wolf OR 93. It was hunger, not the lust I imagined, or the wasted no shame howl you sang. Your legs shattered on the side of the road, a cemetery. A ghost sorrowing through grass in winter. I read about you on the news, wondered how to calculate lonely. What level would you be besides the highest? Not hunger, not love. I am still measuring the word. And then the last poem, pretty long title. Don't bring your 6-year-old daughter to a wild horse auction. Just bring a horse home. She will trace the shapes of scars. Ask where each one came from. Why are they called wild? She will try to release each one only after naming them. Thunder, cloud, and the one called poorly drawn stars is the one she chooses. Then asks about freeze marks, the burn to remove freedom. She will tame our gaze on raised skin and the brand flinching. Discipline refusing body, the wild not giving in. No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibe. It was really wonderful to hear those poems that, especially those first two that I've read so many times, and to hear them in your own voice is really exciting for me. As an editor, I think, there's so much distance sometimes between, opening up something in submittable and then actually getting to hear that poem in the writer's own voice. That was very special. Thank you. And thank you for joining us from the firehouse this evening and making that effort to be here and to let those pieces of your life collide with us. I am so pleased to introduce our next reader, Rue Freeman, who I believe, I don't know, Rue, maybe I imagine this, that we first met nearly 20 years ago at Breadloaf. Were you there in 2004?
1 year later. So it was a sort of psychic meeting.
It was a psychic meeting. I swear we crossed paths there. All right. Well, only in my heart, but I know that I have been following your work for that long, and there is nothing so pleasurable as getting to accompany a writer on their journey. And Rue's is especially exciting to be a witness to, as she has written novels, stories, essays, all collected in books, and of course, poems, all written as a truly global citizen. In her poem that appears in our most recent issue, Rue weaves together the language of fabrics and cross-cultural femininity to compose a poem that questions the costs of beauty and the tenuous notion of freedom in America and the world. Each time I re-encounter this poem, I am surprised again by its subtle warp and weft, and most especially the powerful conclusion Rue brings us to in the final lines. And I'm excited for all of you to hear that in her voice as well. Rue Freeman is an award-winning Sri Lankan and American writer, poet, and activist whose work appears internationally. Her poetry has appeared in Poetry Magazine, American Poetry Review, Narrative, The Normal School, Zizava, Consequence, Michigan Quarterly Review, and elsewhere. She is the author most recently of Bon Courage, Essays on Inheritance, Citizenship, and a Creative Life, and Sleeping Alone, Stories. Her previous works include the novels On Sal Mal Lane and A Disobedient Girl, and the anthologies she edited Extraordinary Rendition, American Writers on Palestine, and Indivisible, Global Leaders on Shared Security. She's a contributing editorial board member of the Asian American Literary Review and winner of the Heidinger Kafka Prize for Fiction by an American Woman. She teaches creative writing worldwide. Welcome, Rue.
Thanks. It's great to be here. And after that introduction, and you talk about your reference to the particular poem, I just want to make a note that I've selected some poems that talk around that as well. So I'll let you know when I'm reading the poem that's in the magazine, but I'm going to start with a different one. I want a man with sad eyes to love me like Gabriel Byrne. I could love him, ferociously aglow and held in the vortex of his despair. We'd both understand too well the fate already near for our kind. Nothing can last. The brute anchors put down hardly met the deep of shallows. They'd never touch the place where the black sea devil swims, envious of the Mariana snailfish, ghosting us all from the trenches. Wild as we were, wild as we are, still nothing can hold us here. Heavens and hells are full of vacancies, and the concierges arrange prisoner swaps and doctor the stats for God. In the damp streets, the hot frozen city streets cut short for the numbers, long for the avenues overseen by the brownstones I want to climb into, suddenly rich and full of tastes I catch. Only the shiver of sad-eyed men hurrying home, where a male beta dances with the angelfish to measure the length of glass palaces, a flick of sudden color at each end, like a heartbeat or a firefly asking for help from the lovely catch of a child's palms, cupping her glass jar. Poem for my lost love. You have become like my dead mother, in absentia constant, the way her hands still stitch everything torn, a purpose found without regard for desire. Each poem is heard twice now that you are gone, and out of the lost echo is born conversation, erudite, pure. Smoke lingers about your lips. The cigarette is what I watch moving in the back and forth of a balcony, its claims of a pastoral theme. 55 cows, their pastures, pleasure, the Pleiades fixed above like a sketch of a flag for a country where we might live. Somewhere out of reach lies an empty bed, always made up. Wherever I've gone with you, across the raw gasp of unfamiliar seas, the dinner reached by ferry, glint of last light that turns Aveleda Vinho not verde but gold, or The great city skyline with a Manhattan, for me always sweet rosé for you. It is to that I return. This is the poem from this issue. The Japanese maple has reached maturity, but I am still a child. Buckram is the first word my mind conjures. Under the tree begged of an ideal husband. It was the year of purchase, the year of death, a harsh word for the fragile dance between my dark eyes and the azure skies of fall days swifting the hours. Farthingale decked with lace from mythical lands. Italian Amelia, Ars, Brussels Princess, Genoese Guipure, Limerick Tambour. I see something soft like that, or softer still, not by women losing sight in the making, but like their eyes when they remove from tulle and silk threads and blur toward a present, or fixing on the skeins of memory, a daughter, a son. My eyes blur. I recall my mother's yearn for things loved by foreign women, their white imperial once. I owned such a skirt, its crinoline flounce. We had watched the store come into being after the kinds of seasons known in tropical lands, the hymation of curfews and lack, some dictator bloodying the paddy fields and wells with the veins of young men we could have loved. That dress, not a dress, but a blouse dissected by a skirt, pinstriped and unsuited to pin-shaped bodies. Above my head, this American-Japanese maple lifts. That skirt lifts. What had been closed opens gladly to the permissive miracle of a spring into summer morning on a college campus. My own mind, its own bustle, an ideal waiting to impale a vibrance upon his country. Her giddy, half-naked dance on a stage, thrilled to have been chosen for this war. The Greek. Stoic, my father called me, bemused and more than a little concerned. I'd picked a single painting among many I preferred. All straight lines, even the curves mirrored. Medieval armor it turned out to be, and I, by association, warlike. I rise to expectations. I rose to his, finding along the way among great books and Western histories the Athenians whom I loved and the Spartans I was condemned to emulate. Years later, I walk through a museum drawn in turn to arsenals of weapons, tin soldiers in hapless formation decked with chainmail, and to the careful rush mats laid inside full-sized replicas of Japanese houses, sparse ceremonial wear set out for tea. It was the awesome symmetry I had loved, the clarity of equal sides, not the war. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rue. That moved me so deeply. Just incredible. What a beautiful, beautiful start to this reading. Next, please give a warm welcome to our third reader, Mónica Gomery, the author of Might Kindred, winner of the Prairie Schooner Roz Shoemaker Book Prize in Poetry, as well as the achingly and gorgeously titled Here is the Night and the Night on the Road, and a chapbook of darkness and tumbling. Mónica is obviously God-touched when it comes to titling, and we are so blessed to have her poem Still Life with Riot and Hospital Wedding in the pages of this issue. She's a Tin House Workshop alum, Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee, and winner of the Palette Poetry 2022 Sappho Prize for Women Poets. She lives with her partner and dog on unceded Lenape land in Philadelphia, where she is also a rabbi. Please give a very warm welcome with real-life clapping for Mónica Gomery.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Poetry Northwest, for having me. I'm really grateful for the gift to read with Rue and Ibe and Kay and Nicole. I'm going to read 3 poems, and I'll open with the poem that's in the current issue of Poetry Northwest. And this is my first time reading this poem in public, so I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I'm grateful to all of you for giving me this chance. This is Still Life with Riot and Hospital Wedding. Still life with neon jellyfish shadow, with a need to get molasses, get slower, get freckled with trees. Still life with blue light, blue century, and the bruises blues do. With snapped mechanical pencils and pulped jars of water. Still life with the mole under my nostril, with my grandfather's yahrzeit, shrill with the ancestors who say, sweetheart, suspicious. Their tongues fold into envelopes, with impending elections, with razors slung through the air. Still life with lives taken by blue, reeling toward furious, murderous birth, toward sirens and tear gas, toward Stevie Wonder and Cher. Still life as hotline, still life as fraud, spending a lifetime unstilling that still life, with the sound of a friend's voice cracking out through a phone from the street, with the scramble of footfall behind him, the battle between domination and breath, his voice vibrational, timbered, goodbye, just in case. Then I teleport myself into the hospital room of two 23-year-old lovers, beam some slow, ancient attention at his falling away face. Bird wings lift off his cheekbones, bruised and brittle with care, a life volant and full. She is seated beside him, first shower in a week, 3 hair clips wedged fastidious into her curls, eyes wet when the Hebrew starts to soft clutter the room. I lift the cup, we make blessings, clock on the wall bearing a monochrome witness. I ask if they want to share any words. Later, she says, which could mean any time past the talk of this life. He closes his eyes, so slowly, I forget he is not mountain. Still life gripped hard or soft in a palm, with fast mosaic of feet on the sidewalk, fast blessings, feet rushing the intersection, still life with gunshot to nowhere, with an imagined glass smashed under an invisible chuppah. Everyone drenched in this doing, as if it could bring back the dead. Death in spring. Death in spring. Mutinous birds. The message comes first thing in the morning, gall of the jaundicing sun, rising sky, quiet, car engines, wisecrack of your blue hair, lamplight of you. Death in spring, trees everywhere losing control, inky knuckles, pink lace, trees unbuttoned brown coats, green sequins revealed, cracked bowl of you leaking. Death in spring, wind readying to collect you as you drip away. God with you somewhere beyond the language spring speaks. All the questions you've asked about God, with you now in the place beyond what the birds know. And us saying your name in the morning, saying your name and the birds say your name, and the quiet creates a blank line. We sign your name to it, memories of you, wiping your eyes with the stars. I'll close with one more. This is from my most recent collection, My Kindred, which I'm happy to just hold up for a moment because the cover art is so pretty. It came out in November 2022, so it's approaching its first birthday. And I wanted to read this poem because it's a big honor to be reading here with some of my writing heroes, and specifically with some of my queer writing heroes. So I wanted to read a sort of strange love letter to queerness in celebration of that. And what you need to know ahead of time is just that this poem is based on a story that's found in the Babylonian Talmud, which is an ancient Jewish text. And as the story goes, God lifts Mount Sinai up over the heads of the Israelite people and threatens them to either accept the Torah or be buried beneath the mountain. So very cozy theology. And this poem reimagines that moment. This is God Queers the Mountain. The last time I taught the story about the mountain, I tented my fingers into a mountain. See what I did there? And people laughed, then leaned closer to consider the base of the mountain, thumb touching thumb, or to consider the peak where my fingers rested triangularly together. In the story, God raises the mountain over the people, either lifting it to hover or flipping it by inverting the triangle, plunging the heavenly peak toward the earth. To be a human being is to walk that bridge slung between what is mortal and what is sky. We call that story mountain like cask, or mountain like rooftop, or the threat of the law. But I'm thinking, let's call it God queers the mountain, master of inversions, insisting the world is capable of being in ways we never saw coming. One student says, if God flipped the mountain, then something is falling off of the mountain toward the people. This had never occurred to me. And now I imagine the landslide of rocks, branches, and scripture pouring down the face of the upside down mountain at the people who stand there and tremble, try to keep their palms open. To be a human being is to encounter debris. To be human is to keep breathing as the gifts and the threats of the mountain hurl toward you. At the reading, the trans novelist talks about rewriting Norse and Greek myths. Someone asks, what is it about the mythic and fabulous that so populates the queer imagination? Someone else responds, archetypes, belonging, new roots. Later that night, a friend asks me, why did it feel like it mattered so much when you made the mountain with your hands? We are slung to the mountain. When it flips, we flip. When it trembles, we tremble. When it takes a new body, when it transforms its shape, when it is lonely or stable or wise. To be queer means to listen for the stories of ancestors and find yourself stacked up against trees, boulders, breathing the breath of the mountain, the inverted mountain. Thanks so much.
Wow, was just like I couldn't stop taking notes. I love that. I love that search for ancestors and the finding of them in so many beautiful places. That was wonderful. Thank you, Mónica. All right. Let's see. All right. Our next powerhouse reader and queer poet rock star, Kay Iver. When I first read the poems in Kay's submission packet, I remember I could not decide which one to publish. So I chose to go with the one that scared me the most. I think when we think about the qualities of the poems that we love, the ones that we want to reread, to share with friends or students, and for me, of course, the ones I feel most compelled to share with our readers, I'm not sure that fear is necessarily the first thing that comes to mind for folks. But if a poem is meant to be a risk, and I believe every poem should be a risk, then I'm always looking for that poem where my heart is in my throat, where it feels dangerous, not just for the poet, but for me as the reader to risk being that close to the truth of the world. And Kay's poems are undoubtedly some of the most gorgeously terrifying ones I've ever been lucky enough to read. I await each new poem of theirs with the best kind of giddy goosebumps. Kay Iver is a non-binary trans poet born in Mississippi. Their book, short film starring My Beloved's Red Bronco, which you should all go out and find, won the 2022 Ballard Spar Prize for Poetry from Milkweed Editions. Their poems have appeared in Boston Review, Poetry Northwest, Tri-Quarterly, and elsewhere. They've received fellowships from the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing, the Sewanee Writers Conference, and the Helene Wurlitzer Foundation. They have a PhD in poetry from Florida State University, and I am so delighted that they are here tonight with us. Welcome, Kay.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you and all of you, but I just want to say that I was terrified when writing that poem. It was the first poem of this new series that I've been working on. And when I read your poem in Poetry Magazine recently, I felt like I'd come full circle. And I just want to read two lines that I've been waking up with from your poem that, have made me feel like full circle. It's from the poem Selfishness that is now in Poetry Magazine. Like them, like people, embarrassed even if a dog can feel the squeamishness of sympathy, like people I've known who turned away from the sharp edges of my breaking. And later, like them, he wanted me powerful. Yeah, it's such a beautiful poem, and I'm really grateful for it. This week, especially, that I get to read this first poem. And the poem that was in this gorgeous, gorgeous issue will be the last poem that I read. And I'll read two more that are part of the series. I'm sorry, it's supposed to come up and, okay. All right, here we go. This is called Central Park. Inside my lover's mouth, I taste what I can't touch. The Octobering of sycamores, the boulder tourists stand on for selfies, the choreography of kites. This is where desire begins, this pulse from lip to throat. I want you means my mouth wakes me up, asking to close around you. Psychologists say oral fixation points to adult addiction. My addiction to lovers made adulthood possible. Loneliness will absolutely rot away teeth. My mouth has always known the stakes. In our hotel room, my lover leans over me, says, "Open your mouth," before he spits. The deep P sound of his lips, another command. Inside my cheeks, the first complete echo. My lover prods my lips down and sideways like a dentist. He tongues the surface of every tooth. He opens his vulva above my face, says, "Suck softly." I can't, not softly. Here's another Central Park. This one ran in the online part or the website of Poetry Northwest a year ago. Central Park. No one watches when my lover picks me up and carries me to a bench, my legs wrapping his hips. I say, 30 years ago, we wouldn't get away with this. He says, "It's 'cause I pass," meaning I don't. I've opened his Sherpa, found his obliques. If I climb him, my hips will unpair. My face will be sharp and shadeless. If I keep scaling my lover, I'll still want him. It's late October. By the new year, I'll be genderless as leaves breaking under his boots. And now the poem in the new issue is called God. It's lowercase with a comma. God, I thought my lover was you. With injections and surgical scars, he welded a gender I envied. I prayed nightly to his plush mouth, believing it had built me. It answered in commands. Leave this pen in your teeth. Press your cervix against mine. I had never eaten a word so willingly, never tongued a wafer so eager for the next. My lover chased me across states like I thought you would. In a bedroom lit by a hallway, he tied my wrists to my ankles and gave me the lashes I wanted because he wanted. I said, "Do you feel powerful?" He said, between hits, I am. God, were you watching? Could you see what bright streaks worship can make? How gracefully the worshipped can flee a room, a body you just flattened into walls, called beloved. I haven't touched myself since. What a miracle this way. I waited for you exactly this way. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Kay. That feels like a special treat because that's a poem. If you read 3 poems of yours, I have read really closely and have learned some dance moves from, and just the way you write and speak and work on desire has been really helpful to many writers, among which I am one. So thank you so much. Finally, I am so excited to welcome our last reader for this evening to close us out with warmth and style. Nicole Wallace was also a finalist in our James Welch Prize for Indigenous Poets this year, and I'm so, so grateful to you, Nicole, for submitting your work to this contest, because Nicole's selection of poems from Anangunsag, forthcoming from Oric Press in 2024, keep an eye out for it. Their selection of poems that they sent us completely transformed my conception of what a poetry submission can look like, how it announces itself, what shapes it can take. Their poem Inheritance, which appears in this issue and is so special, spills out of a continuous world of childhood memory, family, stories, and dreams, and we are so truly lucky to have had the honor of publishing it. Nicole's first chapbook, Wasamoan, was published by IMP in 2019. They were the June-July 2020 Poetry Micro Resident at Running Dog, a finalist for the 2023 James Welch Prize, and a 2019 Poets House Fellow, a second-generation descendant of the Fond du Lac band of Lake Superior Chippewa Ojibwe. Nicole is of mixed settler and Native ancestry. They live and work on occupied Canarsie and Lenape territory here in Brooklyn, New York, where they are the Deputy Director and Grants Manager at the Poetry Project. Please give a warm welcome to Nicole Wallace.
Thank you so much, Malvika, for that beautiful intro. Anim Boju, Nicole Indigenous, Makwa Nindodame, Gakabakong and Donjaba, Lenape Hoking and Danongom. Hi, everybody. I'm really, really grateful to be here tonight and to hear everyone's beautiful, incredible poems, and to have been included in this issue of Poetry Northwest. So thank you all for joining us tonight to be here together. I'm going to read the poem Inheritance that was selected as a finalist and included in the magazine. And this poem is dedicated to my niece, Emery. In a past life, or maybe future, measured by voice, though I knew pieces of the plot, this time I let her tell the story. From above, it was different. Let me tell you what I want, for once. We used to drive her to work in his pickup. It smelled of gasoline, ice layered in crystals harsh on the windows, floor just the metal of the body. There was always something hanging from the rearview mirror, his keys, beaded leather nickel, gifts from his grandmother. He told me that someday when I grew up, I would be able to name all the songs on the radio, to know all of the words. Ginwange we nandi in day, Ginwange. In day. It took a long time. Now he says, someday I'll tell you the whole story. I'll sit down with you and I'll tell you the whole story, everything that happened. An omission with great clarity. Count with me. 1, 2. Ginwange gi inandi in day. Ginwange. Gide. Around the fire, we peeled back bark from the branches, thin branches bent to tie. I'd rather just have a nice time. Have a nice time. On a quiet night across the gravel road from the lake, we sit in chairs in the dark. The stars I point out to him. I'm trying to remember the story of Ojig, something to impress him. I've come to understand this kind of music. I've known it my whole life. Recycled words, the space that exists between. What happens when you know the words, songs, fissures that cannot be mended? He asks no questions. He already knows the story and what he's had to tell himself to get here. I have run out of things to say, given to the ground. Gin wange e, ingi indedamin, indede, gin wange, indamin, indamin, indamin. We're standing in the water, a July afternoon, sun coming up just past the midday mark. High above the birches to the east of where it will set later, a flock of smaller birds dart at a hawk, a predator to their nest. I tilt my head back and feel the light breeze from the southwest warm the orange-black of my eyelids. In it, I see her face, infinite, unfolding, her small feet kicking below the water. Mine, light on the sooted, familiar bottom, bring me up and sink down again. The cloudiness of the bottom has settled. My hands move through the water, rock slicked over with algae. This lifting up, ground beneath the water, holds what is returned. An accumulation of stars, light still traveling. In the dream that reoccurs, the house was the same. In the basement this time, he unpacked the boxes, her belongings at the edge of the window now. From each, she unwrapped pieces made by her grandmother. Outside of the dream, when I left, I returned one to him. I thought you might want this and set it in the closet beneath the stairs, closing the door. 1, 2, Niswe, Niwen, Wabanung, Jawanung, he unpacked them. Threaded yarn in alternating colors woven in a circle, her beads carefully threaded in, long swatches of yarn unfolded as each were removed. I was numbering them 1 through 5, no 4, a cardinal direction, to show but not tell the way forward. Gedamen, Gedamen, Gedamen. Rain at the window, train whistle in the distance in the sleepless deep night. How do you describe the feeling of the hours given small numbers in between and ahead of the dawn, when grasses grow damp and green dark beneath the sky towards the stars at the edges of the evergreen? Wajash moving through the accumulation, a breath of air at the roots, our hands grasping the soil. Chimigwech for listening. Thanks, everyone.
I just added to the chat that I hope all of you, seek out the work of all these wonderful poets that you've heard here tonight, not only in Poetry Northwest, but elsewhere as well. And I wanted to mention that Nicole's work in particular, she's a very visual poet, and the work that she does on the page with her poems is really important and valuable, I think, to the understanding of what she's undertaken in her projects. So I hope you will seek it out. There are wonderful examples online, but I cannot imagine a better send-off, a more thoughtful send-off for us tonight, Nicole. So thank you, and thank all of you for sharing your poems with us this evening, wherever you've been joining us from. As listeners or readers, I hope you felt the same deep heart charge that I did tonight, hearing from these artists. Making Poetry Northwest issue after issue, page after page, is ultimately for me about getting to have my breath taken away and getting to take your breath away as readers. And tonight I feel positively lightheaded from the experience. So please do check out this issue, which we are once again linking to in the chat. And make sure to sign up for our very occasional newsletter. It's so occasional. It's the most occasional thing in the world, so that you don't miss out on another wonderful event or our next exciting publication. We'll only tell you about the important things. Finally, if you'd like to hear more amazing Poetry Northwest poets read their work and hear them read in person, we will be hosting the 3rd annual James Welch Prize reading with this year's winners, Kalehua Kim and J.K. Sosi, as well as prize judge Hyde Erdrich. And that event will happen at Poets House in New York City on November 17th. Poets House has undergone a huge renovation, and they'll be reopening, and we are going to be their kickoff event. So please save the date if you are in the New York area. We would love to see you there. It is going to be a very, very special evening, as was tonight. So thank you all so much for being here and for sharing this moment and these words with us. Good night.